Hey guys, welcome to That Florida Feeling. How is everybody today? Still hot, still summer, still things doing in the tropics. Yeah, bath water out there, and boy is it active. Hope everybody's having a good week. Thanks for listening. Thanks for checking out the social media. Don't forget that I have tons of it. So TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, YouTube. Still learning the YouTube thing. We're getting there. I promise we're getting there. It's just a bit of an adventure. I'll get there one day. Don't forget, if you have a second, please leave a review on Apple or give the 5 stars on Spotify. Don't forget to subscribe and follow as well so you don't miss an episode. If you have not checked out Unfiltered Studios, do so, guys. That's my studio I'm part of, and I love it. There's some amazing people over there. You can find a podcast for everybody. I've made some amazing friends. I've gotten to be on some podcasts. I had some of them on, as you've heard recently, and I love them. They're a great group of people. They build you up. They give you some great advice, topics you would never have thought of, and I can't say enough nice things about these people. So you definitely should go check them out if you're looking for a new podcast to listen to. So today, we're going to talk about something that I would never have thought to talk about, but I actually got it from one of the people from Unfiltered. He inadvertently gave me this topic, so shout out to you, Gomez. We're going to talk about Little Havana, or Calle Ocho, one of the well-known parts of Miami. And what is Little Havana? So Little Havana is actually a neighborhood of Miami, Florida. It's actually home to a lot of the Cuban exiles, as well as many immigrants from Central and South America. Little Havana is named after Havana, the capital and largest city in Cuba. But it's so much more than that. It is so much more than that. And it started out as way more than that. So what did it start out as? So originally it was a lower middle class, southern and thriving Jewish neighborhood, believe it or not, in the 1930s. Little Havana emerged in the 1960s, though, as a concentration of Cubans, and when it grew fast. So today, Little Havana refers to the neighborhood lying immediately west of downtown Miami, stretching west from the Miami River for roughly 2.5 miles. So it's a lot bigger than most people think. And it was applied to the Shenandoah and Riverside neighborhoods in the 1960s, following the beginning of the influx of Cuban refugees there. And if you don't know about that, I did do a couple different episodes on it. There was a Mariel boat lift. I know I did that one. That talks about the Cuban refugees. So go check that out, and you'll kind of understand what I'm talking about during this time. So Little Havana is famous as the cultural and political capital of Cuban Americans, and neighborhood for the center for the Cuban exiled community. And if you've never been, this is a really, really cool area of Miami. Not only do they have amazing food, but you'll find some really amazing people with some really interesting stories. So in the 1960s, a number of Cubans fleeing the Castro regime came to this area, and it really became a hotbed of counter-revolutionary activity. The arriving residents expected their stay in Miami would be temporary, because they really hoped that Castro would be just disposed. They thought that he would be overthrown. They thought that they would get to go back to Cuba, and they thought that it would just be like a temporary home. Well, by the 1970s, the neighborhood was more than 85% Cuban, and rather than returning to Havana, where that Castro remained in power, which we know he remained in power for a very long time, the Cuban Americans decided that they were just going to permanently settle here. And they started settling neighborhoods across Miami. Little Havana, however, remained the major spot or landing point for a lot of the new immigrants, and a stronghold for Cuban-owned businesses. And what's really cool is a lot of their families that stayed there, and they still stay there. And as of 2011, Little Havana boasts the highest concentration of Hispanics, 98% within Miami. And of course, that was 2011, so it's grown since then. Within the Hispanic population, the Cuban population has experienced a substantial, though, decrease from 84% in 1979 to 58 in 1989, and it's continued since then. A group of Hispanics from other places, especially Nicaragua, Honduras, and other Central American countries, have substantially increased since the 1990s. Despite increasing diversity, most businesses, though, however, do remain Cuban-owned. It is still a very interesting place to go. I actually really like it down there. The borders to Little Havana, though, are Southwest 37th Avenue. The eastern border is Southwest 3rd. Northern is going to be Northwest 7th. And the southern border is going to be Southwest 2nd, I can't say this word, 22nd Street or Coral Way. Now, the South River Drive Historic District is the historic district within the city of Miami's Little Havana neighborhood. And in 1987, the Miami City Commission created the locally designed district. So Miami City Commission kind of did this, but it's really cool because it is actually a U.S. National Register of Historic Places recognized U.S. Historic District. And later that year, the National Park Service actually did add this distinct district. So it is located on the eastern end of the neighborhood along the Miami River, just west of downtown Miami. And it is derived from the significance of both architectural and cultural history, and is developed principally for the first 2 decades of the 20th century, so early 1900s. And the historic district contains the city's oldest extant group of vernacular frame buildings near the Miami River. So basically, it's got really old buildings, and they look really cool, and they're preserved really well. And it is really cool that they are preserved so well within this district. The Riverview Historic District, though, also was designated on April 17th, 2015 by the Historic Environmental Preservation Board. And the Riverview Historic District is the city of Miami's historic district located west of the downtown area, again, within the Little Havana neighborhood. And it is the district comprised of single and multifamily residents because of the bungalow, mission, and Mediterranean revival and Miami modern style architecture. So first they preserved the certain kind of frame buildings, but then they also preserved the certain kind of single and multifamily resident buildings. So it's really cool that they have 2 different actual districts within this little area that have been preserved so well. Another thing that is really cool is, and my Spanish just left me for some reason. Hold on. Viernes Culturales. Got it. Cultural Fridays is an artistic, cultural, and social arts and cultural fair that takes place on the last Friday of every month in the historic Little Havana neighborhood of Miami in the heart of Calle Ocho, which is going to be 8th Street between 4th and 17th Avenues. And this event consists of outdoor musical performances on a stage along the sidewalks of Calle Ocho, art exhibits along the sidewalks in the plazas and open spaces, visits to art galleries and cultural centers, cuisine tastings at participating restaurants, and films, art exhibits, and educational programs at the historic Tower Theater. Free walking tours are led by historian Dr. Paul George that leave from the Tower Theater at 7 p.m. on those festival days. So they also really preserve their culture and their history, and I think that's really cool that they show it off. Another interesting thing in this area is that there are a lot of churches, because you have to remember that white people just aren't religious. Let me put it that way. Trying to put it nicely. A lot of white people are not as religious as other people, other cultures, other countries. We're not. I'm sorry. It is what it is. Our culture just didn't do that. Some parts of the culture, like in the South, you go to church every Sunday. Other parts of the culture, you do not. But the Hispanic cultures are very religious, and I think that's very awesome of them. But there are a lot of churches in this little area. There are a lot of very well-preserved churches, and most of them are absolutely beautiful. There's also a lot of parks in this area. One of the cool ones I thought was this, I know it as Domino Park. It's Maximo Gomez Park, Calle Ocho. That's the one I know it as, but it's also known as Domino Park. And you do see people playing dominoes a lot, actually, out there. And because it's really a popular game in Cuban culture. And they meet daily to play, and that's, what I saw them do. And within this area, there's a lot of schools and libraries. But what I thought about this thing was they have a lot of culture in this what seems to be a small area. It's actually not a very small area. But they do have a lot of museums. They have the Bay of Pigs Museum and Library, the Bay of Pigs Monument. They have Freedom Tower. I actually think Freedom Tower is really, really interesting if you've never been to it. The Freedom Tower is a building in Miami, and you can actually see it kind of near the, what is that? Is it Bayfront? It's got the big, giant wheel that you can see it, but it is a contemporary arts museum and central office that is within the Miami-Dade College. It's right off Biscayne Boulevard. But the Freedom Tower is a historic place on the National Register of Historic Places. It is a national landmark, but it hosted the Cubans that were fleeing Cuba. So when they would come, a lot of them would end up at Freedom Tower. It was originally completed in 1925 as the headquarters and printing facility for the Miami newspaper. So it was actually a newspaper. It's a huge Mediterranean revival-styled structure, and it looks like something you'd probably see in Spain, in all honesty. It's got a huge cupola, and it's an absolutely gorgeous building, but the federal government used the facility in the 1960s to process and document the refugees that were coming from the Cuban Revolution, and they provided medical and dental services for them. And the reason they did so is because it's literally right off the bay. It is like right there. You can see it, just like we walked past it a bunch when we were down there in Miami last time. But it's an absolutely gorgeous building. But that's why it's known as the Freedom Tower, is because a lot of people that sought their freedom out of Cuba ended up at this tower. This Little Havana's also got some really pretty theaters, like the Tower Theater, which is an Art Deco style building. It's a gorgeous Art Deco style building, is within the area. They also have the Manuel, I cannot say this, I've never been able to say this one, Artime Theater. That's another really pretty one. It kind of reminds me of an old church, but it's gorgeous nonetheless. And then the Teatro Avante, that's another nonprofit theater that's located in Little Havana. It's gorgeous as well. And again, like I said, the Calle Ocho Festival is an annual festival, not the Cultural Fridays, but an annual festival that is held in Little Havana, and is actually one of the largest in the world. They usually get about 1 million visitors to this area, and it is different ethnics wearing their colors and their flags. And I mean, you'll see flags from Colombia, Nicaragua, Puerto Rico, Costa Rica. You even see people with Irish flags come running around. It's really interesting. It's very cool if you ever get to go down there. And you get foods from all over that are there for purchase, and Latin music, and you get reggaeton and salsa and bachata and merengue, and people are dancing and they're having fun, and it's great. Although there have been some points of contention. One of the most notable was in 1977. A couple of Miami's different ethnic groups had some issues. 8 Cuban Americans from Little Havana, had a bit of an issue. So, every now and then there was a bit of an issue. But that's what this kind of stems from, is that they ended up having this block party out of these tensions. And that's really kind of where this Calle Ocho Festival came from, was like like these tensions where, because everybody was living in these, this small area, and people didn't really get along, and people didn't really know each other, so why not throw parties and let everybody meet, and thus you got the festival. But I mean, tensions do run high sometimes, and so you'll get fights every now and then, but for the most part, this is absolutely a great festival. You get to try new things and meet new people and learn about new cultures, and then every now and then you get to do something fun, like Calle Ocho earned an entry into the Guinness Book of World Records because 119,986 people formed the world's longest conga line on March 13th, 1988. Why not? Because you can. And then they do part of it inside, they used to do it inside part of the Marlins Park, and they'll do it along Calle Ocho, and they'll do it in some of the restaurants and some of the Padilla Cigar Factory, and Lone Depot Park, which is the former site of the Orange Bowl, and they have a Little Havana food and cultural tour, and Ball and Chain, which is a world famous cigar bar and lounge, they open their doors and let people in. And so it's really, really cool to go to this area and to meet these people and to see different cultures and to taste new foods and to get an idea of, how different people live and, get along with one another. And I love it down there. Granted, I love Cuban coffee, and I have some of the best food, and I got my ass kicked in dominoes. But, I think everybody needs to take a walk through some cultural diversity every now and then. I think people need to go to mass in a Spanish church once in a while. I think that you'll come to appreciate other people when you go to places like this, or go to these festivals, or go to these things. I have a ton of fun, by going to places that, some people don't think that I should go. But you do. You meet the most interesting people, and you have the most fun, and you try the new, food that you would never be introduced to if you hadn't. And so, and Miami's really cool about that because, Little Havana's one area, and then you go to another, and you go to another, and you meet new people, and you try new food, and sometimes you just hope you don't get shot. I shouldn't say that, but that's actually true about Miami. Like, let's face it. But the next time you're in Miami, definitely check out Little Havana. I don't think you'll regret it. I didn't regret it. In fact, I had a lot of fun. I had some of the best Cuban coffee, got an amazing Cuban sandwich, had my butt kicked in dominoes, and had a lot of fun. Learned a history lesson or two. So, even if you only know it from Pitbull's Calle Ocho, definitely go down there and walk part of Calle Ocho, even if it's on a cultural Friday, or even if you only go down there for the festival. At least go once. Experience it. Who knows what you're going to find? But you will probably run into tourist and Florida man while you're down there. Sorry to tell you. And so today's Florida man comes to us from, looks like it comes from the West Coast. Yeah, nope, sorry, Polk County. So apparently, and a lot of things happen in Polk County, which I don't understand, because if you're in Polk County, you're dealing with Grady Judd, and Grady Judd is just not somebody you want to deal with. Having lived in Polk County, that man, I would want to go anywhere else to commit a crime than deal with that man, because he is just, woo. Okay, so Florida man tried to evade deputies through unconventional means when they attempted to arrest him for aggravated battery. Sheriff's officers and deputies went looking for Johnny Yates, 41, only to be greeted with a whiteboard message that said, "Johnny Yates does not live here." I mean, legit, right? Like, you just turn around and leave? No. They saw the person leaving the home who told them Johnny was inside with several people. What'd they do? They went in and got him. Because that whiteboard did not fool them. So, note to self, if ever running from the cops, don't leave a whiteboard message. Doesn't work. All right, guys, I hope you learned something new. I hope you found a new place in Miami to visit. I hope you guys had fun listening. I'll be back next week with a fun episode. Stay cool. Wear sunscreen. Drink a lot of water. Be nice. And as always, guys, that's your daily dose of sunshine.
This podcast is a production of Unfiltered Studios. If you would like to know more about joining Unfiltered Studios, please visit our website at unfpod.com for more information.